Welcome to Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, your front row seat to the boldest ideas and smartest strategies in the marketing game. Your host is Reed Hansen, Chief Growth Officer at MarketSurge.
To Inside Marketing with MarketSurge, and today we're joined by Jeremy Barker, the CEO of Murphy Door, which is America's #1 hidden door brand. If you've ever thought a door is just a door, Jeremy is here to prove you wrong. Under his leadership, Murphy Door has exploded into an 8-figure business, hitting over 117% year-over-year growth and racking up more than 1 billion views online. That's super impressive stuff. But his story isn't just about hidden doors, it's about resilience. From working as a firefighter to facing bankruptcy to becoming a finalist for Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year, Jeremy's journey is a masterclass in grit, creativity, and how to blend design with marketing in ways that capture massive attention. We'll dive how Murphy Door scaled into a $56 million business and what it takes to engineer viral content and the lessons Jeremy learned along the way that every entrepreneur and marketer can use to break through. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Reed. I appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, my pleasure. And it's really nice to have a real success story come from entrepreneurship. You weren't always an entrepreneur. You were a firefighter. You've had some twists and turns and have made it to the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. So what did this all teach you about resilience and,
That it's truly a little bit of persistence, a little bit of resilience. Patience is something that wasn't a gift I was received. When I was born, I had zero patience. Spoiled, rotten kid, and got whatever I wanted until dad went bankrupt and then we couldn't get whatever we wanted. So I learned a little bit of patience there. But in my life, I always thought everything happened overnight, and you'll find yourself sorely mistaken if that's what you expect. You get too drunk on Instagram and TikTok and these overnight 20-year-old multi-billionaires in their Ferraris and Lamborghinis that they rent. And I think it's funny, it's all exaggerated, but ultimately those do happen. But I mean, you're like in the 0.01%. So holding your breath for that, you probably shouldn't, and realize that it's going to take a little bit of effort. Well, a lot more effort than just a little bit, and a lot of time. I always tell my guys it costs at least twice as much, takes at least twice as long, and is at least twice as hard. So it's like we always have this tendency to get on Excel, and we have a tendency to add zeros and see how rich we can get in such little time. Like we land this guy, and the next thing you know, we're going to be rich and we don't have to work anymore. And it's unfortunately not the case, but I'll tell you what, it's absolutely something I've loved to do. I've been in and out of entrepreneurship since I was 18. And when I say in and out, it's 2 bankruptcies along the way. In the meantime, it keeps bringing me in. I don't know if it's the dopamine drip of the difficulty. I have found out, however, that it's definitely not the money that I'm pushing for, which is really, really nice because my mother was always about chasing money. Bless her heart. It's something when you chase it, you'll never catch it. And if you can change the focus from it being money-driven to agenda or goal-driven, it's a much easier path because money's elusive a little bit. It's like a conveyor belt. You can attest, Reed, when you get your receivables finally come in, and if you have a late payer, it's like the money's dead. And I don't know if that makes sense to you, but if you're 60, 90 days old, that $100,000 check you were getting has now you owe 100 and some odd, right? So you never get to experience the net margins you build in the longer your receivables age. I feel like it's this elusive thing that we chase, and it feels like we never get accomplishments. In order to maintain a drive into something, we have to be rewarded with achievement in at least the littlest levels. So we kind of teach in our office, set a long distance, big, hairy, audacious goal. I know love it or hate it, that word, but there's got to be something ridiculous that we're chasing. And it's not necessarily it's not necessarily easy for our employees to see that we can do that. So you have to then chop it up into little pieces that are more digestible. We present the elephant and then we show how we eat it by the toe at a time, right? And then we set benchmarks, which can be like, depending if they're visionary or if they're like an integrator, I guess, if you're looking at rocket fuel or those kind of things, they can digest smaller pieces. So you put stuff that's easier to see, it's hard to achieve, but when they get there, we celebrate that little benchmark. Right. And then we keep pointing them into that direction and say, okay, let's set the next benchmark, all while we're sitting at the 30,000 feet in the executive level saying, hey, this big elephant sitting over here in the corner, I don't want them to see that that's what I'm thinking about because it's so big it'll get in the way of them seeing it or being able to see how they get there. So let's just set the marches, right? Like, for example, if I was driving from Salt Lake to Chicago, where
Mhm.
you're at, if I said, "Hey, we're going to Chicago," and I presented to you a wagon with 1,000 pounds in the back, and we're walking, it's going to be like, "Holy crap!" But if I just say, "Hey, we got this wagon, and we're going to go push forward, and all I'm going to do is we're going to take the exit at Provo or whatever, I mean North
Yeah.
Salt Lake, whatever the element is," but keep those little bite-sized pieces. But if you dictate it or you clearly define it, like we're going to stop at this exit and have a drink, we're going to get fuel, and we're going to get food, and we'll take a nap, and then we're going to go to this next exit, and then we celebrate with a sandwich or whatever it is, right? And then they see that they achieve that goal. And you just keep pushing it. They just don't want to know that you're trying to go to Chicago today because your guys probably won't join you on the
Right.
track.
Right.
Fair
Fair
enough?
enough. Yeah. No, I think that's a great summation. Well, in light of that, biting off small pieces. So let's talk about the beginning. You have Murphy Door, which is a really interesting product. How did you come up with the idea? And maybe let's talk about the small steps that helped you get into this huge brand that you have now.
So I've always, early on at 18, I started a shed company that I supplied Home
Hmm.
Depot with. So that was like an early, big, huge
Okay.
win. Got to 20 million in annual revenue by the time I was 21. And that was a big, I mean, we're talking in the 90s, right? So that's a pretty big number for the 90s. And I realized what a, a really good marketing strategy and working with big box can do. And even though that was my first big box retailer, which by the way, my tastes have changed, but at the time I saw how big that can really grow a business. Um, I thought, well, that would be something awesome. And when I've gone through I did go bankrupt in that business because I was really young and did not know how to manage money. Like we get into this race and we start building a business, but we don't know accounting and we don't know anything about HR and we don't know anything about the continuation, summation of forecasting and budgets and profit and loss statements and all the stuff that we probably should learn in high school that they don't teach. Um, just so we can at least manage our own finances, let alone a company's finances, let alone something that's doing that kind of volume, and the discipline of not being stupid with it. I was the traditional like young sports star that, by the way, I don't play sports, but what do I do with all this
Yeah.
money? You need the
Yeah.
watch, you need the cars, you need the trips, right? And then all of a sudden the lumber guy calls and says, "You owe me money or we're closing your lumber account." I'm like, "Oh, well, that's not going to work because I have no
Sure.
money." So, um, in the meantime, it gave me the taste. And then so I went into these other ventures post. Some of it was construction, some of it was direct to consumer stuff, some of it was, whatever. And then I kept going back and forth to fire.
Mhm.
Like it was like this little emergency blanket that every time I failed, I'd do that, or I would do something in that realm that I knew, recharge my batteries, rebuild the belief in myself again, and then do it again. So with Murphy Door, I was running as a full-time firefighter paramedic here in Weber County at Roy City Fire, and I loved the job. So it wasn't a desire to leave the job. This one, despite what I just told you about money, it was a desire to keep more than 750 or 62 bucks every 2 weeks in my pocket. Like that was our take home for a full-time firefighter at the department I was there. And it was just not enough. So I'm like, look, I could find a side gig. If I created something, I could get into depot. I don't have to have salesmen. I don't have to have reps. I could just buy third party and ship it to them and they could make me money and I'd have a little side pocket money. So I created actually the hardware first, where it stemmed
Mhm.
from. Actually, I wanted a theater room in our basement for my kids. They didn't really have. I wanted a ticket booth style door. Kind of hunted around for something, didn't have it. Then I tried to create my own, and I used like a piano hinge and the three hinges on the side of the door, which, by the way, anybody trying to build a hidden door, that is the wrong way to do it. So before you start, stop, or if you see companies selling it, it fails. They twist, they rack, they pull the. I mean, they just don't work. So we created. I do have a little bit of an innovative mind. I've got several patents out there, and I'm like, look, I'm going to make a hinge that anybody can install that'll work and carry huge amounts of load, and it'll be simple, which is just a basic pivot hinge that didn't require specialty equipment to install like some of the other ones. Rixon's been around a long time, a pivot hinge, but you had to have more to sit in. You had to have some specialty equipment that I didn't. So I wanted a surface mounted type style product, and I did that. And I thought, well, that'll be perfect. I can get it into depot, I can get it out, and I can sell it and be great. Well, the problem was hidden door category did not exist as a category.
Mm.
Like there wasn't
Yeah.
one, and hardware for hidden doors did not exist as a category. And so I had to not just build the product, patent the product, build a brand, build a website, try to sell hardware, but then I had to teach buyers that this is a category. And they were like, well, where does it sit? Cabinets? Does it sit wherever? So that was a little bit tough. However, my first year in business, which was 2013, we did 30 some odd $1,000 in
Oh,
revenue.
wow.
And with really high margins, by the way. My hinges were delivering about a 500% margin. So on a $150 hinge, I was making $120, roughly $130, which, on 30,000 bucks, I'm picking up some extra
Yeah.
cash. I'm like, that almost doubled my take home for the month.
Wow.
Almost. So this is great for me. Well, as that started to grow a little bit, more and more people were asking for doors. And I'm like, I've never built a cabinet other than the sloppy one that I did for my kids, and I don't know how to do it. So we found a cabinet company to create this. And that was actually our horizontally integrated supplier that would build the cabinet box. We'd put the hinges on and ship it to the client. What I did not realize I was building when I did it is something that was more or less like, I don't want to call it a magic show, but it had a beautiful reveal. And you're in the marketing world, so you understand. But I could see, and I knew from the very beginning that this was going to be something. I just didn't know how to present it or explain it. I actually didn't know what I was building. I knew what I was seeing. I'm like, look, this is something that can create a door that actually has more than one function, which is keeping you from seeing me change, keeping you from seeing my dirty laundry on the floor, keeping you from seeing the bathroom or whatever. I'm like, what if we could create storage? What if we could create a reveal? What if we could create like the passage to your dreamway? Like there's so many different elements that this one door could do more than be just a door. I'm like, let's create something that's multifunctional that can be a door and everything else. So it was a hard thing to understand and explain to merchants and explain to customers. Like, I get it, but I don't get it. Why do you need one? Like, well, no one needs one, right, per se, but actually everyone
Yeah.
does. Like if you have a little house, you need one. If you have a big house, you want one. Little house gives you 20 square feet of storage in your door now. Like
Yeah.
if you only have a 320 square foot home in the downtown Chicago area, you really need to maximize every bit of wall space, every bit of floor space, every bit of entertainment space, vanities, bed space. Like, what if we created something that had multifunction, that had a dresser in it, a laundry hamper in it, a shoe rack in it, and now everything's off the floor, out of your closet, and now your wall space creates function. And so explaining it and getting the pitch, the elevator pitch per se, out was difficult. However, Facebook was pretty young then, right? I had no money. I couldn't pay for ads. It was difficult to do trade shows. It was difficult to really get my friends, families, or fools to do it because our doors started at around $3,000. So I had to kind of do, I hate to say this, but falsify the door, what it would look like if it was a door, and ask the cabinet guy if he could build something like that if we were to sell something like that. And then we basically engineered every door off of a fake bookcase that we made look like a door in an image, and then we'd send them that. Hard to do, right? And what I did see is when we started Facebook, that was the free opportunity that we had to kind of present our story. And really quickly, we got 100,000 followers, which was really
Wow.
crazy at that time. But you weren't having to pay for follows and you weren't having to pay ads. Like it really wasn't that platform. And I'm like, wow, this is really working. And why? And I never really understood the why. But until recently, it's really the reveal. People see the sexy door, they think it's beautiful, and then they also want to see what's behind it. So our hold time on our views is really long. Like you can show the door, and then they want to see what you're really hiding, right? Like if the intent was to hide like every door, and it's not, but people will still want to see. And it's kind of funny that our hold time or our watch on video, every video is so long. They always wait till the end of the view, which is a cheat code that kind of Murphy Door has been. I guess that's been our magic potion to get such virality.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And
Right.
it's tough. Like you said, it is really hard to engineer virality. And, your product does lend to it. It has a reveal element to it. It in itself has like kind of a delight and surprise element, which is,
Yep.
I mean, that's a great thing to try to introduce into, other businesses, that surprise and delight and reveal element.
I think in your world too, not
Yeah,
to cut
please.
you off, Reed, but I think when it comes to marketing, we get too concerned or we drink too much of our own Kool-Aid feeling like we're selling something. And we got to stop selling something for price. Like it's this race to zero when we start chanting price. People aren't nearly as concerned about how much does it cost because they're not waiting for that in your video. They're waiting for something that's going to make them feel something. Like that's why they're watching the video. So it doesn't matter if you're making like burrito bombs on TikTok Shop or the number one product on TikTok Shop. Like if you were just selling product and that was what you were selling, it's not going to move. but it's actually, what is it? Like, what does it do for me? And they want to relate. They want to see themselves with it. And then they hook to the price. Like, they're not buying burrito bombs for price. They're wanting amazing tacos. And then they look for the price. But I really think we spend too much time thinking that our customers are so worried about price, but really they're not. They want to feel a certain way. They want to understand what you're trying to deliver. They want to see themselves in what your deliverable is. And if you really look at every product from a third lens, and it's like, why is the buy more than anything? What is it that they're buying from you? It's not that they're wanting to just throw away $20. It's not, we chant price. It's like $20. Like, well, they can throw $20 away in a fountain. Like, let's really tell them why the $20 is the value, right? And what they're really going to get, what they really are going to feel. And I think it takes a different lens to step back and kind of see it. And it takes a little time to get there. And I have to give my team credit on our creative department. They always are looking at, like, how can I make people feel from this? Like, the product should be like the secondary. And so many people in advertising campaigns make the product the primary. And if you think about Yeti, if you think about the way they did their campaigns, it was always the cooler in the boat with the trip of fishing. They were watching the fishing thing, and it was just a rider along the way that made that experience be part of something that people could relate to. And I use them as an example because I really looked at them as an example for me to create that same kind of emotion, doing a lifestyle ad, that we were a part of their story, not trying to own the story. Like, I look at Murphy Door kind of as the gateway to your dream. Like, Murphy Door is like the cherry on top to whatever it is that you're going through. If they're going into your office, like, you just get to pass that into a place of serenity. If it's your speakeasy, if it's your man cave or she shed or whatever it is you're building, like, what if it's just the passageway, and it's not to steal from who you are, it's just to make you feel into what you're entering.
Yeah.
The way you want to feel when you pass through, or how you want to present people or get people excited about something, right? I think we need to do more of
Yeah.
it.
No, that's great advice, Jeremy. You've had like this rocket ship type success with this brand and tremendous growth and obviously a lot of great learnings. Have you had any missteps along the way that were great lessons that we could take
More
away?
than one.
What's going?
Let's just put it that way. It's more than
Yeah.
one, and I say this with all due respect and love for this, but it's one every day. Right? We look for our missteps every day. My banker, I met with him years ago, and he's like, dude, if you're trying to drive daily, you're going to drive yourself crazy. You need to drive like monthly, quarterly, or annually, or semi-annually, or whatever. But in my heart, I feel like, look, if I can find the course correction daily, it's easier to hit my weekly goal. If I hit my weekly goals, it's easier to hit my monthly goals. If I hit my monthly, it's easier to hit quarterly, et cetera, right? So I love to do course corrections every day. Now, you can't shake the whole boat and do a 180 every day. That's not what we're talking. We're trying to find that 0.1, 0.2, 1% degree change that keeps us on course or improves our course, right? And most of the time, you're going to find your course improvements in your errors, not in what you're doing great. We spend too much time celebrating greatness and not enough time celebrating mistakes. And I know that this is kind of the trend everybody's talking about, like, celebrate your failures. Well, if you think about it in a mechanical sense or mathematical sense, you find those little failures, those course corrections veer you correct, like more in course, rather than like if we just constantly drink our own Kool-Aid. I hate to say this, but we'll have the Britney Spears effect. We have 20 years of solid wins, and then when we finally have a loss, it's a big, huge train wreck, and then they find themselves in a place they don't recognize. But if you can do these little 8-inch step falls rather than 800-foot cliff falls, it's much easier to adjust without having a huge collapse. So I try to tell my team, like, what awesome that you guys beat your goals yesterday, but even awesomer that we identified a couple mistakes that we're making.
Yeah.
Right. So then we can course correct really quickly. And, in the marketing world, I have a software that we created, and that's really what's propelled Murphy Door to go where it's at today. And it's finally available for everybody to use, but it's called purebrand.io, and it's an app on Shopify, which is really powerful. I hate to give away my cheat code. I finally decided to share it with everybody else because it was something we created internally. But what it does is it allows our past customers to share their experiences with future customers. And we are so transparent that we give the keys to every client we've ever sold to talk good, bad, and different about us to all our future clients. So you'd go to murphydoor.com, talk to an actual customer. You have a video call. They're all in line. And we pay them $50, by the way, to take the call, regardless of what they say. It's funny to watch. Like, so you work for Murphy Door? No. Do they tell you what to say? No, actually, it's really weird. They just turn it on and say they're going to pay you, and I don't believe it until you finally just start getting deposits in your account. And everybody can set there how much they want to pay for their meeting. I understand there's value ticket variances, but what this does for us and what's been magic is those customers give us all the pros and cons is that what they experience with Murphy Door. And then the future customers are saying all the pros and cons of why they're concerned or what they couldn't find on your website and all this stuff. And we take these conversations and we transcribe them, and then we do a sentiment score, and then we do the pros and cons from each person. And then we put an action plan from the past customer, like, hey, their hinge is squeaky. Let's get that replaced. Future customer couldn't find this on the website. Make that more prevalent or talk more frequently about this. Here's your action plan. And by the way, salesman, here's the sales pitch to talk to your future customer to make sure you address all his concerns. And then, I mean, it does way more than that. That's just a high level, like step 2 of 10, what this software does. And it's all automated and it's amazing. And I'll tell you what, our conversion rate went from 0.24%. By the way, we get millions of visitors, as you can imagine, on our website. So it's a fair enough conversion rate. It's not where we want it. But if they go into that pure brand funnel and say, talk to an actual customer, 41% conversion rate.
Wow.
So it's a 17,000% increase if they're willing to be educated from past customers instead of being sold by our sales team.
Wow.
Right? It's a really interesting piece, but what we gained is the insight of failure. Like, we're not celebrating the sell as much as we are hearing the past customer's advice that they're giving to a future customer, and their future customer is giving us advice by talking to the past customer. And we take that and we integrate it into our business to improve all the elements that the customers are experiencing. So we look at it as like a 360 review, whether you use pure brand or not. It's an outside external input about what the world is thinking about you and your business instead of what we think about us and our business. They're saying, here's all the things that we love and hate. And then we take, depending on how you take that, you can either say, I don't like that customer, they're mean, or you can say, thank you, customer, for giving me these great points that I can make sure you get your experience improved, and all future customers don't have that experience either. And then the future customer, you can improve the search process or the conversion process on your website as well. So I think more companies need to have the 360 review as well as a 360 view of ourselves, like a full perimeter view, good, bad, and ugly. Whether we want to hear it or not, it's what we do with that advice that really, really matters.
Yeah. Well, that is fascinating and really in line with a great marketing practice in terms of exposure, transparency, authenticity, willingness to really put your reputation out there. And I love that. Now, there's so many directions, we don't have a hours long podcast, which you have more than enough content for that, just in your experience. But if people would like to learn, follow you, even Murphy Doors, or maybe we could repeat the links. Sure. Where are these links that they could find you and contact you?
So right now, I'll tell you a few things because of my experiences and some of the stuff. I've done a couple books. Okay. I've got one out there right now called Founder Fallout, which is the 100 questions to ask future partner, like that you answer and they answer, and you can get in alignment. I've got one coming out right now that'll also be posted here in the next week. It's called Before You Blow It, the 100 questions to ask yourself before you start your own business. And then my kind of autobiography is called Ashes to Empires. Now, you can follow me on Instagram at jbarker482. There's Murphy Door on Instagram. LinkedIn is Jeremy G. Barker on LinkedIn. My website's just jeremybarker.com. Yes. And we're working on it. But I'd love to see it. The book's on Amazon, and I love to help people. I love to participate. I love entrepreneurs. That is really something that I'm passionate about. I've got a whole bunch of young men to old men and women that are asking, like, what do I do next? And the little guidance points that people may take a little morsel of, that's why I do these. And I hope that everybody beats me in this game. I love to see people surpass me in this ladder. I'm not here to win anybody. I'm here to just beat my own hurdles, and I want people to do that themselves because it's pretty rewarding.
Well, thank you. That's very inspirational and generous of you. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jeremy.
Reed, absolutely. Thank you for having me, sir.
Want to stay ahead of what's actually working in marketing right now? Head over to MarketSurge.io and see how we're helping businesses grow smarter, faster, and louder. That's MarketSurge.io, because your next breakthrough shouldn't be a guess.